Well, as we prepare our hearts for Sunday morning's worship service, we're going to look backwards first. We're going to look at last week's sermon, and then we're going to move forward to this upcoming week. Last week, we looked at Paul's partnership with the believers in Philippi, noting that the way that Paul uses the word grace in Philippians chapter 1, he says, all of you sharing God's grace with me. He's talking about gospel fruit. A lot of times, again, we think of grace, we think of justification, but he's talking here about gospel fruit, about the Lord continuing to bear fruit through our lives. We have an opportunity to experience the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit and to watch him bear fruit in our lives, and not just in our lives personally, but through our lives, which is quite exciting. And the Apostle Paul described how this partnership had been so fruitful and beneficial, even to his own ministry. When you look at Philippians chapter 4, we find that the church in Philippi financially supported the Apostle Paul from the beginning as he left Philippi and went to Thessalonica. And then even how they, in the face of severe poverty and suffering, they had given generously above what they were even able to. They gave to the believers in Jerusalem. And so he describes his partnership in ministry. And if you continue reading through the 26th verse, you'll note that there's a flow of thought in which Paul says the gospel continues to be proclaimed. And this proclaimed out of envy from some as some sort of an opposition to the Apostle Paul's ministry. But Paul says, regardless, the Lord continues to do profound work through my life, and I'm excited to remain as long as the Lord has me, that I would continue to bear fruit with for him, knowing that someday when I pass from this life, I will step into his presence. And so then when you move forward to Philippians chapter 1, you continue reading verse 27, which is going to be the primary verse in our reading. It says, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. This idea of living in a way that is worthy of the gospel of Christ, the verses behind me, they directly correspond with this flow of thought, and they're probably backwards on your screen, I'm not sure, but they directly correspond with this theme. So you can go ahead and read those passages if you would like, and prepare your heart for the morning worship service. But the Apostle Paul, as he talks about this, he's saying, you have the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit. There is real power available to you. The Lord is going to bear gospel fruit through your lives. And he says, you have all of this in front of you. You have the opportunity to reach your community with the gospel of Jesus Christ. You have the opportunity as a strong church to build each other up, that the Lord might be glorified through you. And you can continue to partner with me and with others like me so that the gospel might be proclaimed in nations around the world. This is exciting. And the Apostle Paul is writing them saying that you're able to. He says, conduct yourselves in this manner. He's encouraging them with this because he knows that they can do it because they have the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit. He has modeled this in front of them. He has taught them what they ought to do. And now he's reiterating this fact that they need to continue to walk in this power that is available to them and actively at work in their lives. And so we read through this and we might think, well, because of the positive things we know of the church in Philippi, that they were accomplishing all of this, that the Lord had all of these exciting opportunities in front of them, and they were laying hold of those. But they weren't. And as you read the end of Philippians chapter 1, you note that Paul begins to call this body to obedience in unity, that they would be united in thought, in purpose, that they are united because they have the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit in their lives. In fact, there's a flow of thought from 127 through 2:18, and we're going to break this into 3 distinct sermons because I believe there's enough content to cover that. But the Apostle Paul is challenging and he's calling the church in Philippi to be filled with people who are humble not just by the world standards, but followed the example of Jesus Christ, who did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he poured himself out. That's the Greek word that's used there. He emptied himself is kenosis. He poured himself out on our behalf. As we think about this, people don't challenge people. They don't call them out for something unless there's a problem there. In the 4th chapter, Paul is going to name 2 women by name addressing how their conflict was undermining the mission of the local church. Our humility, our faithfulness to the Lord, our surrendering to the paradigm established by Jesus himself of how we should live our lives, when that begins to break down, it affects the whole church. But when the church comes together in unity of thought, of mission, of purpose, united in the Holy Spirit, there is nothing in the world that can stand in the way. I hope this week that as you prepare your heart, you would read through Philippians 1:27 through 30, and you'd ask yourself, do I model this behavior? Am I contending with other believers for the sake of the gospel? Am I alarmed by opposition? Am I willing to suffer if that's the road that the Lord establishes for me? Can I continue to keep my eyes on the author and finisher of the faith? As you read through the beginning of the second chapter, asking yourself, do I serve other believers? Am I humble? Do I prioritize myself over them? And then as you read through the 11th verse in the second chapter, asking yourself, do I follow the example set by Jesus? Have I thought about Jesus's humble example recently? I look forward to discussing this further with you on Sunday. May the Lord bless you.